Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ideas Sin. My name is Denise, and I'm excited to bring Dawn on the show today. Dawn, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here. Just so you know, everybody, I love Denise. She's amazing.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you. Oh, well, so Dawn and I met at a public speaking event, and it was like a Tuesday evening, and we ended up going, and it was like a big circle of people who showed up to this event. And I showed up because I'm always looking to learn and try to better myself in speaking. But what brought you there?
Same thing. I enjoy speaking. I love being in front of everyone. And the way the event was explained, it sounded like, wow, I could really learn more about public speaking and connecting with people and really getting the message across so it's helpful for them. So pretty much the same reasons as you, Denise.
Yeah. And have you applied any of the skills that you picked up at that session into your everyday life or maybe your work or other aspects of life?
Absolutely. She was talking about, I'm trying to remember her name right now. She was fabulous. I really enjoyed her.
Sammy?
And Sammy, yes. And she has she sings as well.
Yeah.
So she came from an approach of singing and how to use your voice. And then there's different tones, through the nose and through the throat or up through the diaphragm, things like that. So that was really helpful. And I started working more with the diaphragm and breathing because it helped me to be able to project more. And so my voice is carried and I can use my voice longer. For a long time, it just kind of goes out on me. If I talk from the voice, it gets from the vocal cords, it gets tired really quickly. At least for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, do you remember what element you were?
I don't. Would you remind me of what do you remember?
Yeah. So there were different elements that she used to describe how you can project your voice. And so you had grounded, which I guess this is our grounded. It's just how we're talking right now. And then there was airy, and so it's very light and blah blah. And then there was like water, so it's much more fluid, and you're going like this. And then there's fire, where you're projecting a lot more, and you're trying to make a statement. And that's the one I struggled with, even though I have a lot of fire within me. It's just like, I don't know how loud I should be.
Getting a little feedback always helps. That's a good, thank you for reminding me of that. I remember using that even more depending on who my audience was and how they would be receiving it. So if you're talking to a bunch of, CEOs and owners of businesses and male, female, they tend to be fiery and more direct and more present. And then there's some people that are more laid back and they, something flowy and more gentle, they would respond better to.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I still have to go back and try to practice those things because it hasn't necessarily been on the forefront of my mind, although it's like, you take on bits and pieces and you try to apply it when you remember and when necessary. But
exactly.
I mean, so for you've also gotten into a lot of different avenues, and you've gotten into music, and DJing was one of those things. And I feel like when you're DJing, that is part of, I guess, your job, is to feel the energy of the crowd and be like, what are these people feeling? What are they trying to do? Do I hype them up? Do I calm them down? Like, what's that been like for you?
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely loved it. Did it for 16 years with my husband. He had his own DJ business, and then I joined him. And yes, it's all about the energy. What's going on with the energy of the people? What is the event? What's the objective of the event? The people who hired us, what is it? What's their vision? What's their signature of who they are that they want their guests to walk away with, the feeling and during and after? Because I did a lot of weddings and bar bat mitzvahs, and this is really pivotal in their life in terms of memories, and you want it to be the best as possible in terms of, and they do. Everybody wants it perfect. So you just find a way to make that happen. And reading the crowd. And I have this ability, fortunately, and I've been able to hone in really reading body language and tonality and kind of taking the whole idea of what the purpose of the event is, and then merging it with the people that are there. So you're choosing music, you have a timeline, you have interaction. I was very interactive. So I had the microphone headset. So I'd be in the crowd. I lead off dancing. I dance. This is how my husband and I got into DJing, is we were dancing, and then people said, "Oh, can you do our event? Can you DJ our event?" So it morphed into that. So it was a lot of fun. And I did practice with my voice quite a bit. And I would come from the diaphragm, and I definitely needed a microphone.
Yeah.
There are some people that can do it without a microphone. But I needed a microphone. So it really made a big difference in terms of their ability to really enjoy, so they can clearly hear instruction, they can understand. You're playing games with them. You're, sometimes singing. I wasn't
really?
singing, but
DJ
singing is
and
not.
singer.
I'm not no. I encourage them. I'd start them off and let them go. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh,
I loved it.
Yeah, that sounds
Loved it.
really fun.
It was a lot of fun. If you're willing to be a leader, you're willing to be out there, and you're organized. And I suggest anybody try it. I mean, it's out of their comfort zone. They may not become a DJ, but at least put themselves out there to feel what that's like. And maybe they like it and maybe they don't. Who knows?
Yeah. So are there different ways of DJing? Because some people will have like the vinyl, some will use I don't know. I was going to say DAW, but I don't know if that's like the same in the DJ world, but they use like the laptops and different consoles and stuff like that. What was your style, and what are the different ways that you can DJ?
That's a good question. For me and for my husband, I mean, he started out actually with CDs. So he didn't do vinyl back then, but he did do CDs, and then it went digital. So there were all kinds of DJ software that you could get for your laptop, and you could DJ from them, and you could do a lot of different things. You could do some mixing. There are a lot of DJs that are club DJs that do events now. So they use the vinyl and they use the mixer, the actual physical mixer where they're doing that. That I never did. We were more about, the name of the company is Pulse Entertainment, the heartbeat of your celebration. So this was more about, yes, choosing the correct songs and having a wonderful sound system. And at the same time, it really was, who are we and how are we coming to this event? We love people. We love events. We love all different types of people, all different ages. And we love to interact and play games and dance and encourage them to sing. So that was our specialty. A lot of DJs stay behind the DJ booth.
Yeah.
And they may talk a little bit on the microphone. And we didn't do a lot of talking. And they weren't really with the crowd. We were people that were with the crowd. So the people that hired us were the people that wanted that type of interaction.
Yeah. And when you're going into an event, or when you're preparing for an event, do you typically pre-record a lot of the music? Or, well, I guess with digital, you can create a playlist and stuff like that. But, even back then with like vinyls, are people actually, mixing the music live, or are there a lot of like pre-mixes and then they just kind of play and then maybe add a few effects here and there?
That's a good question. A little bit of both. So most of the club DJs that do events, they, and most DJs in general, they have a list of music that they like to work with. And they have mixes that are already put together or stringed together. So there's many songs. For us, we were on the edge. So maybe Cocktail, and dinner, because they said, okay, we like this type of music and this is the type of crowd. When it was time to really engage everybody, we were like pretty much winging it in terms of reading the crowd and making our choices and how to connect the different music. And most DJs won't do that. That is very risky for them. They feel really uncomfortable with that. Certainly, we knew what songs worked together. Most DJs come to events and they have a playlist, and whether that's your style or not, they still play it. So that was one of the biggest complaints that we got from people who were coming to us and wanting to hire us. They said, that is not what we want. That happened at my friend's wedding or, a relative's wedding, and we want somebody that can really play music that our crowd is really going to be happy with. So that's what we did. Do you know, one time I have a story. We did this one, where was she from? I don't think she was from Ukraine, but she was from another country with music that we had no knowledge of whatsoever. And they decided to hire us. It was a referral through a friend, and they gave us a bunch of music, but they didn't really explain the music, right? We didn't know what the music meant. We don't know what they were saying. We did know, we were listening to tonality, we're listening to the beat of the music. And this is kudos for my husband. This is about my husband made this happen. And he was like studying the music and thinking about it ahead of time. He didn't create a playlist, but he was familiar with the music. And then he, as it was going, I mean, you could tell he was working hard. He's like, oh my God, right? And so you had the Americans there and the Ukrainians there, and they had their own music, and you were mixing American music and Ukrainian music, and they had, so they had their dances, they had their, traditions, they had their songs that they wanted to sing. And then, like, in the middle of everything, the guests were coming from Ukraine. They were coming up and putting money on the table, on the DJ table. And we didn't understand what was happening. And somebody explained to us that they were so happy with the mix of the music.
Nice.
And we were like, really? Oh my God. Thank God, we didn't know.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I mean, that just goes to show sometimes it is about feeling the music and understanding where that sound is coming from and who that sound is for. Like you said, it's almost like a intuitive DJing. And I appreciate that because I'm very critical of DJs. Whenever I go places, I'm always judging, and I'm like, sure, the song is great, but how's your transition? And then I'll listen to the transition, and a lot of times I was like, wow, that's really shitty. Like, I don't like this anymore. Like, you're done. So, I mean, like, and I give them, I'll give chances, and I'm like, all right, let's see how the next one goes. Wow, that was not great. Okay, never mind. So you can definitely tell when people just create a playlist. And yeah, I've been to weddings like that where you see that the DJ is just playing music that nobody really wants to dance to. And they're like, come on, guys, come and dance. And it's like, no, I'm all right.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to read the people, but like, that's something a lot of DJs need to consider is like, you can't just play what you think the people, well, I'm going to restate that, but it's like, you can't just rely on the same tried and true methods, and you can't think it's going to apply to everybody. Like, I like your intuitive approach of being like, yeah, I have this potential genre of music or this vibe. And yeah, so I appreciate that style. I mean, is that something that you both initially knew you were capable of doing, or is that something you kind of had to figure out over time?
That's a good question. I would say David started the company before I met him. So I would say he went along with, because he was working for a DJ. And so the DJ would hire him to go out and do some of his work. So that's how we started. I mean, we morphed into our own business with our own DJs and assistants. So I think he played the list that he was given. And then he started to go outside the box. Because he's like that, he's like, all right, well, how do I get them engaged? What do I think they're going to like? Let me try this. Let me try that. let me see how that goes. Let's see how they respond to this. Yeah. So that's how that happened. And then he taught me. I mean, then I was around that environment when he was teaching me. So that is just how I did it because of my, because of the learning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. And did you have to invest in a lot of equipment to DJ, or do you think that you can DJ pretty minimally at events?
I would think that there is a good investment level because you really want excellent, sound equipment and speakers and tables and all the gadgets and widgets and everything that goes along with connecting, the two computers and the software and the backup. You need a lot of backup. You got to have backup. Something goes out, and it's got to be right there. You got to, change it out quickly and things like that. So it's a good investment, I would think. If somebody's doing it minimally at an event, I think they're taking a chance, and I don't think it's going to be the best case scenario for the people who hired you.
Yeah. And so how many events? Well, I'm assuming maybe your husband already had like a clientele built up, but I was going to say, about how many gigs did y'all end up doing unpaid, just to gain experience and put yourselves out there versus, like when you finally dove into getting paid gigs?
We were always paid.
Oh, okay.
Because, again, he worked for a DJ, so he would be paid. It was less than if you had your own company. And he did that for a couple of years. And then he went into his own company, and then he was fully paid. And as we increased our skill, our fees went up as well. Because we had these amazing reviews and amazing testimonials and videos. And so it really, so the brides and the grooms, or the bar bat mitzvah families, could get a gist of what we're doing, so they could see what we were doing, and then they saw the reviews. So we earned that. We earned the higher fees that we were charging. They were still reasonable, though. It wasn't like we were,
Yeah,
25,000. It wasn't like we lived like 3 hours from New York City, which they would charge anywhere from 10 to 25,000. I mean, that was not the case for us, not even close.
Yeah.
So depending on where you live.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's not bad. I mean, if you can really like get decent at DJing, and you can go to these bigger cities and DJ for a weekend, like that would be really cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And usually those DJs are club DJs that learn to be event DJs. So they usually are, charge a lot of money.
Okay. And so what would you say is like the primary difference between a club and event DJ, aside from the setting, obviously?
The club DJ is the DJ. It's going to be behind the mixer and the computer and everything that's going on. And he's going to be there's a lot of wonderful female club DJs really mixing the vinyl. I've never done it. I've seen it. I've never done it. So they really know how to work all the sound effects and how to mix it and how to connect it or flow it, the transitions and everything like that. And that's what they do in the clubs. So that's what they're focused on. They're not so focused on the event itself. These aren't normally people that can do the introductions or interact with the crowd very well. Some of them do. Most of them don't have that side of their personality or skills developed yet.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I've been to plenty of clubs, and I would always be the one that's going up to the DJ and requesting random songs. I'm like, hey, hello. And some of them loved it, and others were like, no, I got a playlist. And I'm like, corny. Whatever. But no, but it's good. It's I definitely see where you're coming from. With the event, you are engaging with people a lot more, and so that does take a lot of interpersonal skills. But what were you like doing prior to DJing?
Well, as we DJ'd, we did other things, like he's an electrician. He went to school, or not an electrician. He's an electrical engineer. I have an accounting background. I also got into the subconscious. The subconscious is something that, psychology was really important to me as a young child and as I got a little older. So I was developing my own method about helping people update their beliefs so their behaviors would change. So that was part of what I was doing as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then what had gotten you into that? Was that something that you were always drawn to or something that you just kind of fell into?
I think it was something that was natural to my personality. I think I was born with it to some degree. And, like a lot of men, like a lot of people in their families, there's a lot of behavior that is dysfunctional. And I remember being 7 years old and looking around between my family and going to school and neighbors. I saw these behaviors that were less than positive. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I know these people were good people and they wanted to be loving and accepting and move forward in their career or their life, or they wanted more out of life. And they just kept living the Groundhog's Day of human existence. It just, and I don't know why at 7, I remember being 7 and saying, there's got to be a better way. I didn't really put it in terms as I just did as an adult. I knew though, at that point, I'm like, I had this passion and I was driven to say, I want to give people more of a chance, myself too,
Mhm.
more of a chance to live a more fuller, happier life.
Yeah. That's like really intuitive for a 7-year-old.
I know. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, do you think that over your life, like you were slowly developing these skills to help people like with their subconscious and like you studied it more, or did you really like dive into that much more at a later age?
Good question. In my teenage years, I'd say later teenage years, I just started studying psychology and self-help books around mental health, or, I guess it could be termed a little bit differently, but your outlook on life and being able to be happy. And I fell into the subconscious. I was like, because, psychology does talk about the subconscious, and at the same time it doesn't really dive deep into it as far as how can you help with changes. I mean, they talk about affirmations and things like that, which I think are helpful. And at the same time, if you have a belief system that is not on board with these affirmations, good luck.
Mhm.
The subconscious dictates 97% of what you think, do, and say. It's extremely powerful. So finding a way to encourage the subconscious to release um, thoughts and behaviors and beliefs was what I was targeting. And there's a lot of wonderful people out there. There's Brian Tracy, Bruce Limpton, Joe Dispenza. Most people know
Yeah.
Joe, that have different ways of approaching the subconscious. So I learned from them. And then I'm kind of like an engineer that I want to test and see, what works best, because I wanted people to have a good experience. Like in therapy, usually they keep reliving the
Mhm.
same trauma over and over. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that.
Yeah.
No way. So I found ways to make it fun, go really deep and make it fun at the same time. It's a 3-step process that works great. I mean, I see them change right before my eyes within session. So
Mhm.
it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, can you explain a little bit for some of our listeners or viewers what you mean by the subconscious?
The subconscious. So we have several brains. We have the reptile brain. So this is, billions of years ago. And so that's fight or flight. You have the subconscious, which some people call the unconscious. And this is the habit brain. This is the brain that is developed between well, it's already developed, but it's programmed
Mhm.
between ages, 0 to 7. And the conscious mind, or the critical mind, which is usually the mind that we're using most of the time, is what was I going to say? I forgot, just went out of my mind. I'm talking about the brains. I'm like,
No, that's okay.
so the critical mind is, something that if we can be present, good luck, we can manage that better. With the subconscious mind, that's happening, everything's happening behind the scenes. I say, what's the saying that I say? Limiting beliefs are to you what kryptonite is to Superman. So it's very powerful. And when you have those limiting beliefs, it dictates everything. So the subconscious, I'm getting back to your question. So it's really the habit mind that's been developed. So people go, throughout their whole life with this programming in the background running their life, and they don't even know it's happening. So when you see somebody have behaviors that don't make sense, or they can't get somewhere in life, or they're, sometimes you see adults behaving like they're still children. These are the reasons why it hasn't updated. It's working off meanings and experiences that happened a long time ago. That's what I was going to say, that the critical or the conscious cognitive brain was not able to process the logical meaning of what actually was happening at the time. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. At least for me. Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, because I feel like, and I've mentioned this before, but it feels like we are able to keep track of like our physical development, but emotional and mental development has just really been slacking a lot, just as human beings in general. And so it's really interesting to think of the different ways that we can tap into monitoring the subconscious more and maybe helping to come up with programs or systems that can allow us to like stay on track, with our physical development. Like, okay, you're a 40-year-old and this is mentally where you should be 40, and emotionally you're like there too, versus being like you're still in like the teenage phase or something like that.
Exactly. And so for instance, when I work with somebody, I had somebody who, I remember this one man, he was really caught up with things that happened when he was little, and it really bothered him a lot. And they weren't necessarily traumatic events. It's how the subconscious interpreted them. So when we talked and we went through the three steps, that he said after that, it just let go. The subconscious let go of this reminiscing and holding on to these events, that every single day, he said his mind would just constantly think of him. So he was sad. He was not able to move forward. He was, he had social anxiety. He really couldn't move his life forward. And he was in his 40s. And after that, he said, I'm not thinking about that anymore. I'm closer to my family. I'm closer to friends. I'm going out more. And I was just so happy for him.
That's really good.
So I don't know that's something that people can do on their own. I think that they can manage their limiting beliefs. I actually release them and then replace them with new meanings and beliefs and experiences that support a healthy adult lifestyle.
Yeah. And so with your experiences working with clients, do you find that sometimes that negative emotional attachment like potentially develops over time, and it's not even like the same initial emotional feeling that they had during the time of the event, but over time it's like they develop this negative mentality toward it because I don't know, maybe another part of our subconscious is like upset that we haven't processed it. Like, is that possible? Or do you think it's more like external influences that impact those emotions?
I like that question. So we're digging deep. What we're looking at.
That's what I do.
That's Denise. What my experience has been when I'm in session and I'm helping people with the transition is that we find something, through questions that actually happened when as young as we can go. Usually it's even younger than I can even get to. However, and at that point, that is where the most of the charge is. So I would say probably 90% of the charge is derived from the initial experience and how it was interpreted. Now, with that said, once the subconscious is programmed, it's constantly looking for the same experience. And so then you keep having the experience over and over because the subconscious thinks, oh, this is good for Dawn. I'm going to keep doing this. The subconscious doesn't know if it's good or bad for you. That's the dangerous part. And so you keep, for instance, if you got yelled at every time that you tried something new, and it happened when you were a little kid, so the subconscious in the background is seeking out people and events and experiences that will continue that behavior. So of course, it's going to become worse as life goes on until it's removed and replaced by something that is like a good experience. Oh, I did this and this is wonderful. And I tried something new and I was supported. I do that within session. So it's a new program.
Yeah. That's really cool. I feel like a lot of people can use something like that. I mean, yeah, we have like the really dark aspects of ourselves that we maybe need to process and go through and let go of, but like just as individuals as a whole, like we can always use like a little upgrade in our up leveling, and as human beings, I think like the planet would just be a little better at that regard, if we all took that step forward. But, even just talking about this, like how much friction have you received from expressing this and talking to people about this? Because mental health is still not fully appreciated and not fully accepted in our society. So when you start diving into this, how did other people perceive it?
I would say 99.9% love it. And I think it's because I say, oh, my specialty is the subconscious. So I help align people's subconscious with their goals and vision. And they're like, like, what do you do? And they're drawn in. They're like, tell me more. Oh, this is amazing. I could use that. Right. I run into people once in a while that they don't know what the subconscious is. But I'd say 99% of the time, it's very well received.
Oh, that's good.
Now, if I said mental health or used other terminology, they probably wouldn't be so receptive.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So sometimes it's just about how you word something that can really stick to a person.
Exactly.
Okay. And so do you think that you're going to continue to develop your program more, or I don't know, is this something that you think you'll continue to do throughout your life? Or is this something that you're like, you know what, I'm still feeling it out for the time being? How closely attached are you to this?
Very attached.
Yes.
I've been doing it for 20 years and it's so fulfilling. And I believe that all people human beings have an innate urge to help others. And this is pivotal. This is powerful, even though I keep it simple. And ever since I was little, it was important to me that other people have a better, happier life. And that has not changed for me. This is always going to be part of my life. I would certainly like to take it to new levels, maybe with VR. I love VR. I actually talked to somebody that Denise, that you introduced me to, that we talked about this a little bit. And being able to bring it to the masses, maybe with AI. And that's something that we're looking into.
Yeah, because you have a background with that as well, like with technology and all of that too. So what was that journey like for you? Because you've been through a lot of different avenues, which is really cool. Like, I love that. But
I know you do. I know. Yeah, me too. Yeah. You have too, Denise. We're going to interview you.
One day.
One day. I think technology, honestly, my husband is a visionary, and I've known him for 26 years.
Mm.
And he is a person that loves technology, and he's very positive, and he's always like, how can we use this different technology for helping the world in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big influence on me. And I gravitated towards VR because I had a VR experience. Now, if you've ever had a VR experience, it is hands down so powerful. I mean, once you put those glasses on, and you go into whatever the software program is, you forget about your physical surroundings, your being, your body, your mind. Like it goes to a completely different place. Super, super powerful. And what I did do once, which was because I lived in Silicon Valley for 5 years.
Mm.
And that was like Candyland for me. Like we loved it there. So much fun. So we went to a hackathon, and a hackathon is something that's very popular in the tech world. So this is about, usually a weekend, a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, where it has a theme or a topic, and they're coming together. So it's usually software engineers, business people, design people, VR people, all, around a business, around a startup. And like, what is the idea? And let's try to develop the framework around that within those 48 to, 60 hours, whatever it is. And I did a few of them. I did one that had to do with VR, and it had to do with the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And this was in San Francisco at the Google building, one of the Google buildings on whatever floor. Anyway, we went in, and what happens is there's like 100 or 200 people, and they get divided up into teams. And our team had 8 people. And before you're divided up into teams, you're like, all right, this is what we're doing. This is what the outcome should be for each team, and go find your teammates. So we did that. And I remember seeing a man standing where everybody was sitting all by himself. He's just standing there. So I go over, I'm like, hi, what's your name? And I'm like, well, what do you do? He goes, oh, I'm a VR software engineer, or whatever he calls himself. And I grabbed him like by the collar. I'm like, you're coming with me. Oh my God, I know what we can do. Oh my God, right? And and come to find out, he was the only one in the hackathon that weekend. He was the only VR guy.
Oh,
nobody
nice.
else did VR. And with my background in the subconscious, and this had to do for a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital in San Francisco, and it's the name of it is not coming to me right now. So it was about children who were very sick. What kind of games? What can you put together for technology to help them? And so it was a fundraiser. So it was all being, live, so people could watch to see what was going on and donate. And so I had a team. We had a team of 8 people, and they all had their own idea of what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And they were all very different. So I started writing down on the whiteboard, okay, what are your thoughts? So I'd make a little, one-liner, what they were interested in doing. And then I merged them all together. I'm like, I took a little bit of each person's idea, so they all felt like they were contributing. And then I talked about using the VR game to help cancer patients feel empowered over cancer, and explain the visual and the visceral. So it's visualizing and the feeling. And none of them had any clue, didn't know that even worked. And I explained that there had been research, and also people saying that they did it themselves with their own mind and cured themselves. So I don't know how we did it, but we decided to go down that avenue. And I'm so excited that we did, because we actually created the idea, the MVP. So it's just just a framework. It's just the base idea of putting the VR glasses on. And so when the child is seeing into the VR classes, it's going through his bloodstream. He sees himself going through his bloodstream, and he sees red blood cells, and he sees the cancer cells coming at him. Mm-hmm. And the idea is that he or she would tap on the side of the glasses, and it would shoot out the white blood cells, which are the immune cells. And the immune cells would target the cancer cells and kill the cancer cells. So it would explode them and it would disappear. So it was called red cell or blood cell hero was the name. It had a little cape on the blood cell and stuff. So it was fun.
That's
so
awesome.
That's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how strong vision is in their lives. Like our eyes are just literally taking in tons, like billions of pieces of information, whether they realize it or not. Like, okay, like the door's over here and this is over here, and then you've got this here and got. So yeah, VR I think is a really cool way to help with a lot of those things. And like, I appreciate that cancer treatment is one of those things that we're targeting. And I think it can help in a lot of other disease areas as well. But do you think that that's something that, so I know you already mentioned you'd love to do that for the subconscious, but have you gotten in any other efforts since then, since that hackathon?
Well, Denise, actually, I told you about the story and you said, oh, that's interesting. I met a man who sounds like he's doing exactly that. And I'm like, really?
Oh, yeah.
And so that was during the pandemic, I think. And, you know, as far as him starting it right before. Anyway, thanks to Denise, I did connect with this man on LinkedIn and we had a conversation. So this man is doing exactly what I just described. I mean, I never went anywhere with it, and a group never went anywhere with it because we were told that the people in the hospital would not use it because they just have their own protocols, and it was just too much for them to do anything with. So, but this man is doing something. I mean, he says it's going slowly. It's not, you know, widely accepted by at least the Western medical field and the people because it's very different. They have their own protocols and how they do things.
Yeah, that's always how it is. They're like, nah, it doesn't work. And then eventually you get like a study in, and then everybody's like, oh my God, we got to get on top of this. So this is just what I see. I'm like, I'm always, you know, looking like, I don't know, sometimes like 10 years ahead. And I'm like, guys, this is not going to be relevant. Or you guys are like still back in the 50s and 60s. Like you gotta start catching up. I think it's definitely going to make a change in the future. And the more that technology continues to grow and develop, that's definitely going to become more immersive. Like VR will most likely be like a common thing in households in the future, I think. And so that would be really cool to see if like platforms and concepts of like what you're referring to, and then just medical treatments, if that can become more regulated and more normalized, I think that would help a lot of people in the future. But yeah, I think we still have years to go before we dive into it.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I remember hearing or reading an article about, so behavioral change is a big thing for VR. And this was an example. So we had a group of men who beat their wives or their partners. And so they tried a lot of different things around trying to stop the behavior. Now, these people that do this have, again, their own subconscious beliefs and behaviors that are happening in the background. So it's very hard to change. However, what they did is they had the men put on VR glasses. And in the VR glasses, what they experienced was somebody coming at them, trying to hit them and saying vulgar things or, you know, demeaning them. And they said that the change in behavior was in the 90, I forgot what it was, 90 some percent. Like it really changed their behavior once they experienced what they were doing to other people. And I find this like an eye for an eye, the idea, you don't want to hurt people. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, when somebody experiences something that they're dishing out to someone else, they don't usually really understand how it's affecting someone else. And if you are able to, throw that back at them and have their experience, usually 9 times out of 10, their behavior changes. Have you ever found that?
Yeah. I have. And it's funny, like you say that, because I've always thought of that as well. A lot of people, they don't want to change, or they refuse to accept what somebody else is saying because they haven't experienced it. They don't know what that's like. And so it's like, yeah, how, yeah, the eye for the eye thing. And it's true. It's just like, well, how would you like it if this happened to you? And for most people, they can hear that, but they can't
Yeah.
visually or conceptually even begin to embody what that would be like. Like, a lot of people are just not there yet. Like, their imagination is not there to ever imagine something like that. So yeah, I agree. I've had thoughts of that, like, years ago, of like, to prevent abuse cases or all of this other stuff, and ways to try to increase empathy. Like, how could we do that? And it's like, oh, if we can just kind of get them to somehow experience it for themselves, where, yeah, they sign up for it, but they don't necessarily experience anything physical,
Right.
then, hopefully that'll engage them a little more. But I think so. I definitely think so. But yeah. Have you seen any other things happening with VR? So you saw that with, like, medicine, like dealing with cancer, and then you have your interest in the subconscious, and then there's the one with, like, yeah, with abusive individuals. But do you see any other potential trends in how VR is going to shape our society, do you think?
Well, there's a lot of information out there and talk about using VR, and there are many applications now to reskill the workforce. So I think that's going to be very helpful because you're going to be able to actually, um, the software is going to take you through step by step as you're doing it, which is a great way to learn. So whatever you're learning, it's going to be able to be something very immersive, and the mind is going to be able to learn it so much quicker, I believe. So it's going to be pivotal in the ability to reskill people. A lot of the applications or VR has a lot to do with like fighting or working out or like these,
Yeah.
that type of thing, which, okay, it's entertainment. And I'm glad that there are many companies taking it in a different direction to help people in many areas of their lives.
Yeah. And then what about AI? How do you see AI potentially affecting individuals' subconscious or their normal day-to-day behaviors?
That's a good question. I have a little bit about that. I experienced a software that was being presented on LinkedIn, so it was like a little bit of a sample.
Mhm.
And my background also, I have certifications in many different types of coaching, and this AI software, because when you're coaching, it's really important for you to be neutral, to be positive, to ask questions, not to give advice because you're not a mentor.
Mm.
So you need to be in a certain space because the mind and the ego want to go in other directions. So you need to have that together to be able to be really good. Well, we're dealing with a software. So there's a software out there that is able to do all of that. And of course, the software doesn't have any emotions. So the software, it's been programmed very well. So it'll ask you a question, and you're not typing everything out, and then you answer it, and it intuitively, or at least with the data, with the MI, which is the machine learning, this is the next question. How I think that's going to change is I think it's really important to have coaches out there, and people want the human interaction. And at the same time, AI is going to offer other ways of using coaching that can really help people move forward in their lives. Because people really don't do anything unless they think they thought of it and they want, and it really came from themselves. not many people want to be told what to do. So coaching really helps with that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you think that I'm like I already have an idea in my head, but do you think that AI is going to eventually take over a majority of the coaching available for individuals? Or do you think that, like you noted, there's still going to be people who are like, no, I want like an actual human being. I don't want to deal with AI. Or do you think that in the future you may combine coaching, like actual person and AI together to optimize that process?
Yes, good question. I hope it's going to be a merging or a combining of both, because I think it really can help people. Um, like, let's say you go to a coach once a week,
Mhm.
right? And you're texting and emailing them back. But if that coach had an AI partner app that could help you through some things too, that's really fabulous. And it helps people have the support when they need it. It could be in the middle of the night. You never know what's going on in a person's
Yeah.
life, right? And so the coach themselves, I do believe that because people have, the coaches have the training and they have emotions and they have all these brains that are working together, or minds working together, I believe that they're going to be able to recognize. And like the work I do is very specific. So I'm recognizing things that are on a really, really deep level. I think like life coaches or accountability coaches, or they're doing an amazing service, and they're going to be able to notice things about a person's behavior, about their body language, about their tonality. All these things come into play. How much AI can do with that, I'm not really sure. I'm not an expert in AI. And at the same time, uh, I mean, it's just like anybody, when you call up to get help, or you want to talk to a person and you have a chat bot, or you have some kind of text thing and you're like, I really want to talk to a person because it's really not understanding where I'm coming from,
Mhm.
you know? And I'm hoping and praying that the humankind will continue to utilize AI, but not have it be mainstream. I hope they still connect with humans, because humans need humans. And if we don't have each other and we go to AI, I don't know how we're going to survive, because innately we need humans, even though they can be impossible at times. Or we,
Yep.
it's not they, it's we. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I mean, there are folks that might not be super in tune with their emotions, or they're like, I don't feel emotion, but it's like, well, that's something that maybe should be explored. I mean, actually, that's a good question for you as a coach and somebody who's worked with the subconscious. For people who are like, I don't experience emotions, or maybe they experience emotions too much, but how how much emotion should somebody actually feel?
I've never been asked that question. Well, I think when you're talking with someone, you can tell if they're not in balance with their emotions, if they're not experiencing them much or at all, or if they're experiencing them too much. So I think with anything, just having a healthy balance of that. So you don't want emotions to take over your life, where you have them and they just keep, you keep having it for days and weeks on end over the same thought process, because you're kind of like in that place where you're just thinking about the event over and over, and it's, you can't seem to get out of that loop. And then people who don't have emotions, it's like, well, they're not really living life, and they tend to have all this energy that's stuck in their body because they haven't experienced or acknowledged it. So that can lead to a lot of, disease, or
Mm.
health problems, things like physical health problems as well as mental and emotional. So I would say a balance.
Yeah. So I would assume like people who are not really in touch with their emotions, or block them out, I would think that once they start experiencing it, it can be quite overwhelming. Has that been your experience with that? Like, how are
It can.
people when they're first stepping into emotion?
That's a good question because I went through that myself because I was a person that I didn't understand emotions. Like I had a
Mhm.
therapist show me the emotion wheel of all the faces, and there's like 30 faces, and she goes, "Oh, can you identify that?" And I couldn't,
Yeah.
you know. And so what was my journey with that? There was fear. It was uncomfortable because there was vulnerability. So I wasn't in a place as a child that it was okay to be vulnerable.
Mm.
And I think it's little baby steps. It could be different from each person. I mean, my therapist wasn't necessarily saying, dive into it and just, you know,
Mm.
have a big hurrah with all the emotions. It was like a
Yeah.
little bit at a time about different experiences or topics or things like that. And as I experienced it, I became more embracing of it because there was a freedom that was happening. There was a release, there was a freedom, there was an acceptance of self and others. Um, so I would say baby steps. Everybody's different. I mean, maybe somebody that goes from no feeling to a lot of feeling could work for them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that happen, but it could.
Yeah. Hmm. And then what about the individuals who experience too much emotion? Um, like, what are your experiences with that? Like, how is it that they've gotten to that point where it's like, okay, they're, I don't want to say unhinged, but they just feel a lot of emotion. Like, how did that happen versus, the counter to it?
What I'm noticing is that if they're experiencing a lot of emotions, usually they're something that happened again when they were little, and it was something that was in their environment. So maybe they saw that a lot. Somebody was always worrying or making events into, just small events into something catastrophic. Or maybe it was a way to get attention. Or maybe it was, a lot of times, Denise, with our world and what we eat and the air and all the chemicals in it, it affects our biochemistry in our body.
Hmm.
So sometimes what happens is that there's an imbalance in the body that's causing the central nervous system to be hypersensitive. And once that's addressed, I have a doctor actually that addressed that. It took me years to find him. Most doctors or people in neurology or in anything with the brain or the central nervous system, they may not they may not realize that there's outside influences of the chemicals that are not natural to our body that's really wreaking havoc with our behavior. So if you have the endorphins and all the other different emotions or chemical reactions in the body, oxytocin, I think it is, certain experiences and thoughts and behaviors will trigger it. And in addition to that, certain chemicals will trigger the imbalance in the body. Um,
Hmm.
and I've seen that quite a bit. Like I haven't worked with people. I've had people come to me that have been diagnosed with some kind of mental illness. And my first question is this a chemical imbalance, which usually it is,
Hmm.
that has caused this? So I may recommend different ways of detoxing the body, different ways of making changes to get the chemicals that are affecting, or you might be born with a gene, like in my family, there were some people drank alcohol when they were pregnant. So that's not good because that's really going to change the development of the fetus. So I had somebody in my family who was mentally ill basically because of the mother smoking and drinking while she was pregnant. Now, back in the 40s and 50s, it was very common. This can cause mental illness. Now, that's not something I can help with. I can suggest they see somebody who can detox. I mean, if it's a gene, how do you change gene expression? You can do that to some degree. Anyway, those are my thoughts.
No, I love that. I mean, I think that is important to remember is, yeah, your environment can affect you, but sometimes it is genetic. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like some people
Definitely.
are literally just stepping in and trying to break like these generational traumas or issues, but sometimes it's just in your genes. Like you can't, like that's even, I don't even know, like you have to dive in even further just to try to fix that, or just just to feel whole within yourself. Like it's not even just about taking care of other people. Sometimes you just have to focus on yourself and fixing what's imbalanced within you, and that has to be a journey for people. I can't imagine it's that easy.
It's a journey because there aren't a lot of professionals that know how to do it. However, there are professionals that know how to do it. And if there's anybody on this podcast that listens to this that wants to know more about, how to find out who might be able to help them, they can reach out to me. I'll send them some links and some suggestions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I hope people like reach out if it resonates with you, like it never hurts to ask a question. It never hurts to just get some information and just read over it and see if that connects with you. And if you feel comfortable moving forward, then go with it. But nobody, like, don't ever feel afraid to ask questions and just get some information there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It is really interesting. I mean, how often do you get people that just show up to you and they're like, I don't know what's wrong, but I know there's something wrong. Help me figure it out. How often do you have people doing that?
Most people feel that way, or they have an idea. They're like, well, I know that this happened when I was a kid, but I don't know how to change it. I've been to seminars. I've seen different coaches, therapists. Nothing's changing. I don't know what to do, and we have a conversation and I find out a little bit more and I explain a little bit more of how I might be able to help. And they can see that it's different usually than what they have had experience with. So yeah, a lot of people, some people just come to me and they have no idea why something's happened. Or I work with them and they're like, okay, we're working together on this topic. And then some other part of their life changes. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize. I had a man come to me that had to do with paperwork. He just had a big aversion to it, right? And he had his own business. So that was challenging. And so we worked through that, and he came back to me to say, oh my God, I'm actually having conversations, because it didn't really work out well with him in terms of relationships with females, with love relationships. And so our work together actually changed his ability to be able to communicate in a way that created a container for he and his partner to have a healthy conversation. And it really moved their relationship forward.
Well, that's great.
I mean, it's all connected.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely, like, everything is connected, whether people realize it or not. And the brain is like such an important organ within our body. I mean, do you find that when people go in, I mean, you already kind of noted this, but like, they go in and then another area of their life changes, but how often are people going in to better themselves as an individual within a relationship versus, something else that's much more personal?
I have worked with people and children too, for many different reasons. In terms of relationships, some people come to me for relationships. That hasn't been my focus. However, it is a bonus to working together. So a lot of people will look at their business or being in business or or their work life, and they're more apt to work on things that aren't working in their work life because it means, oh, I'm going to get a promotion, I'm going to make more money, I'm going to be happier. And so you have these relationships in your work life and in your personal life. So relationships are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And many times they don't necessarily want to be that vulnerable about a personal relationship. However, they're happy to talk about a work relationship. So the behavior is very similar, and it will help improve their personal relationships. Did I understand your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I did have a man come to me who he was 70 actually, and he had all kinds of degrees and PhDs in psychology and early development and just a lot of stuff that he had. And he worked for a lot of big companies as an executive coach. And he'd have anywhere from 20 to 30, C-level people that he was coaching at these companies for years. And I was doing LinkedIn Lives for a little while. And he listened to one of my LinkedIn Lives and he contacted me. He goes, I've been doing this, da, da, da. He goes, I know a lot about psychology. I know a lot about coaching, he goes, I completely agree with you that change happens only on the subconscious level, like lasting change. And he goes, I want to work with you. I was like, oh,
okay.
Happy to. And he had main areas of his life. And one was relationships with women. And one was health. And the other one was money. So it was like the three main ones, right? And he did my 12-week program. And he said at the end of the 12 weeks, he goes, this is magic. What you do is magic. He goes, all the things from my childhood that haunted me do not haunt me anymore. I do have a happy childhood now. I believe that everybody can have a happy childhood. So you can be adult and, go back to that and have that. And that's what I do. And he said, money's flowing. I have a relationship with a new woman in my life. And it's never been healthy, and it is healthy. It's a healthy relationship now. And my health is doing well. I'm taking care of myself. I'm losing weight. So things had changed in his life. Yeah. And that gave me so much. I mean, it just inside, it just gives you these warm feelings of being so happy for the person who he goes, for all my life, this has been a struggle. And it's not a struggle anymore.
Mm-hmm. And for people who are so used to toxicity and unhealthy relationships, what do most people typically experience when they start transitioning into a healthier relationship? Like, are they just like questioning it, or like, what is that like for them to experience something completely new?
Good question. Let's imagine that we have a program running in the background, and this program dictates the type of relationships that we have with maybe a partner, a romantic partner. And all of our lives, our subconscious is running the program and saying, okay, I'm attracted to this person, I'm attracted to that person. And these are people that are fulfilling the programming of unhealthy behavior. So it's doing that. It's out there finding those experiences and people that's going to continue supporting that program. When the programming isn't there anymore and there's new programming, it happens with ease. And so what happens is the program is looking for the people that will be healthy, for the relationships, the communication that will be healthy and loving. So you're going to be attracting those people instead of the other experiences and people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not like this big transition. It kind of like it happens easily, and they don't have to think about it. When people leave our work together, I don't say, okay, go out and say these affirmations and write these things down. And like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's like do all these tools and exercises. I don't do any of that. I said, don't even think about it, because your subconscious will take it from here. If you consciously try to figure this out, it's going to interfere with your success, with your improvement, with your transformation. Just let it all go.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because the thought that I'm having is, while it's programmed into this and you deprogrammed it, now it's going into like neutral zone. Like now you've deleted the programming. So to your point, like if you start consciously feeding it, you're going to add more to that. But is it within human nature to program it correctly? If that makes sense?
Yes, good question. And I tried to communicate this, and I deprogram it and then I reprogram it. So I give it the new experience. I give it the new programming within the sessions.
Okay.
So that's what it's working off from.
Gotcha.
So you're right, because if you take it out, Denise, and there's nothing there, what's going to happen, right? You're kind of lost. I talked to a woman, she said, that actually happened to me. I went to a weekend workshop and they did all that, and they actually removed it on some level, but they never did anything to replace what was removed. And she goes, for months, I was lost. I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to think around that topic. It was a very difficult experience for her. So it's imperative that the reprogramming happens to support the desires of that, of that client. The lighting here is not good.
No, it looks fine on my end.
We have the sun is like, woo!
Oh, really? No,
which I love. I love the sun. Yeah, I look too. Anyway.
Oh, it's perfect because you have your island back there. Yeah, I love it. And you're on island time. I love that. I'm all about island time.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's go.
Yeah, seriously. So for individuals who are looking to get into this for the first time and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to find myself a coach or a program and this and that. What are the ways that they can vet out the program to ensure that, okay, yes, there's the deprogramming, the neutralization of it, and then the reprogramming? How is it that somebody can go in and determine that A, all of those things are going to be met, but B, that the reprogramming is actually going to be suitable for them? Like, how can you determine that?
Good question. First thing I thought of is that I have a lot of really different testimonials and reviews. So people, when they read them or listen to the videos, the proof is in the pudding. So they're going to recognize how different people with different challenges are pretty much having the same outcome. That way you'll know that they've had the deprogram, the reprogramming, and that they've had a positive outcome, which has worked for them. Now, the programming is about what are their desires. I don't put in any programming. I find out what's important to them. Of course, I'm not going to program anything in if they're sadistic and they want to hurt other people. I'm not going to do that. I've never had anybody like that. So when they're looking at different programs, listen to the reviews. Listen, if they all seem about the same and, generic, I question those things because I'm like, are they really real? Or is it something that somebody just made up? Right. And then how do you know? I think it's important that the person know, and within the coaching session, I know that it's important that the coach and the client find out what are your goals, what's important to you, what are your values, where do you want to go in life, what has been the challenges, how has that affected you, And usually most coaches are well trained in being able to ferret through that. And you'd be able to have a better idea of what type of programming that you want to have happen for yourself. And how do you test it? Well, again, the proof is in the pudding. What happens after this has happened? Have they done it for other people? And if they have, the chances are that they can do it for you. I've never had a person that I've ever worked with in 20 years that didn't have an outcome that they didn't want in their life.
No, that's really good, is to check out the reviews and reach out and just do like the one-on-one calls. I think that's really important. And
yes,
I feel the same way about like the generic reviews. Like I'll go in and I'll read it. And if it's like super blanket, like, yeah, it was a great program, I enjoyed it. It's like, people ask others like, hey man, can you just write me a review? I just need to get like some things up there. And that happens.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So that's really good advice. I mean, a thought that I had as you're describing that is, have you ever thought of combining the DJing and the subconscious work together? So it's like you have your music and that.
Okay, tell me more of what you're thinking. This is very interesting.
I know.
Well, music is very powerful, right, with the brain.
Oh yeah.
What are you thinking? Do you have a vision or an idea?
Well, I guess like for me personally, when I was going through my own like really dark, depressive times, like I literally went through a cleansing, including the kind of music that I listen to. Like some people, they'll stay attached to certain things and they like the sounds of the music, but they don't always look at the lyrics, or they're like, I know the lyrics, and they sing along. But then I'm like, but do you really see and hear what the lyrics are? Because as soon as I started analyzing the music that I was going into, looking at the lyrics, I was like, man, I don't believe in this at all. And this is talking about this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, do I truly align to this? Is this really aligned to my values? Does this make me feel good? Like there's, I grew up with like rap and hip hop. So there's a lot of music out there that it talks negatively about women and this and that. And I'm like, is that how I want to be treated? Is that is that what I believe? And it was like, no, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe all these like negative and depressive things that are being said in music. So I know I ended up cutting out a lot of it. And I've gotten myself to a point where it's like, okay, that those lyrics, they're not feeding into my energy anymore. But I'm wondering if like for you, because you have that kind of intuitive play with creating music and playing it based on like who it is that you're interacting with, I'm wondering if that could be something that you integrate as well, as just being like, hey, try to listen to these, I don't know, like this playlist that I made, because maybe it's resonating, or it kind of continuously conveys the message that you're trying to give the person, but because it's music, it's hitting them in a different level. So I'm wondering if that could be something.
That's interesting. I really like it, Denise. I think it would be very powerful. So I'll give it some consideration. My husband and I have talked years about lyrics of music and how it affects people. Now, some people are audio digital, some people are kinesthetic, some people are visual. So the lyrics will affect them a little differently in terms of how much they're taking in. However, the subconscious is always taking in that information. Yeah. So it will train the subconscious, and it's very repetitive. I love it. Great idea, Denise. Oh. And then I thought to myself, if somebody, I never asked anybody, and I'll ask them what music they listen to. And then after we work together, just like to test it.
Yeah.
To see if their music interests change. So if they're on a program that is self-defeating or womanizing or whatever, and they're listening to music that supports that, and maybe the music actually caused the behavior in the first place, is what you're saying, I think, the lyrics. And I wonder if that would change after working together. And you're saying also suggest music and lyrics that are going to support how they want to go forward, and have them try that and see how that helps. Love it. Great idea. Never thought of that.
I'm more than happy to help you with that process because I mean, me personally, I love music. I feel music. Like there's a lot to it that I really love and connect to. And I know that that helped me in my journey is like filtering through that because I also listen to a shit ton of different types of music and tons of genres and in different languages. And like you noted, back in the original point of the conversation where you're listening to like the Ukrainian music and you don't necessarily know what they're saying, but like you're picking up the different tones and the sounds. And I feel that as well. I have like playlists with like international music and in languages I don't understand, but it's like I feel what it is that they're trying to convey. And so I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I can attach myself to that. Or I feel like that's gonna vibe with me when I'm feeling this type of way. And it's like, okay, this song has a really good beat, but I really don't like the negative points that they're saying. And so, yeah, I think lyrics like they feed into your conscious. And if that's all your brain is like filtering through is all these negative things, it's like watching the news too much. It's like the same thing, So cutting out the news
Exactly.
sometimes is also very helpful.
Yes, yes. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on in the world. I don't listen to. I have a good news app on my phone.
And
I
yeah,
love what
right.
you're saying. I love what you're saying. I love it. I love it. Yeah, there's documentation of, different countries using certain type of music to brainwash their citizens. That
Yeah.
happened back in I think Germany it was, and with Hitler, and there are certain types of music that will turn the brain to behaviors that are very destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's just still out there. It's still out in the mainstream. And whether people realize it or not, because it's like upbeat and fun and stuff like that. But it's like, no, but listen to what they're saying. Like, would you want to be that person experiencing that? Or would you want somebody that you love and care about to talk about you in that way or treat you in that way? Like,
Mhm.
for what? You know?
Exactly. That's huge. I think that when things like that change, um, humanity can change, just like, movies or television shows or, um, all kinds of media that's out there that they're brainwashing people. Brainwashing can be for good or it can be very destructive.
Yeah.
Very good points, Denise. Thank you for sharing that. I love it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see like how things develop with you on that. I think that would be really cool, honestly. Yeah. And so for
Me too.
anybody, oh, sorry.
Me too. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so for anybody who is maybe interested in exploring any of these things or even DJing. Oh my gosh, we didn't even get into dancing. Like, how often are you suggesting people to just go out and do different activities? Like, have you ever suggested people to go dancing or go, take on a different hobby to help with reprogramming?
Not necessarily with reprogramming. I think it's good for, it depends on the person and what's going on in their life. Sometimes I just talk to people and I can, be aware of what's happening. And you have introverts, you have extroverts, you have people that are somewhere in the middle. And what I've learned about, because I'm more extroverted, what I've learned about introverts is that they have their own little world of excitement happening.
Mhm.
Right? So maybe mine is more outwardly and people can see it and I experience it. And I learned that they are too in their own way. They're experiencing life. So I'm very careful with that, respecting where they're at. Um, People, if they ask about some of the things I try and they're interested and they want to know a little bit more, then I, share with them. And if it's not for them, I'm like, oh, well, what are some things that you like to do? Or if they're like, well, I'm afraid to go out and meet people and things like that. Well, what are some ways you can meet people? Do you want to meet more people? Well, sometimes it's nice, but I get really nervous. And so I'll ask a few more questions and help them find a way to maybe fulfill a void that they have. And it can look very different than my personality. That's why I ask them
Mhm.
questions. So it's for them, because what I learned is that everybody has their own way of thinking about things. And if you stay neutral and you don't impose your own ways upon them, which is very natural for us to do, if you don't do that, it opens up the door of them being willing to explore more if they're not a person that explores. Now, is it a problem if somebody doesn't explore?
Yeah. No.
Maybe it's not. For us, we're like, really?
I know.
For them, they're like, yeah, I'm good. I mean, if it's causing, them to live in a world that's unfulfilled and without love or self-love, or they're not able to function in life, then it seems as though some uh, new avenues probably would be helpful for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. I've thought of that. Like my brother, he's much more quiet. He's more introverted than me. Like I'm more of the extrovert, even though I consider myself like an introverted extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. I'm always out and about doing stuff, and I'm always like, "Come on, you gotta try this and that." And he's just like, "I'm chill. I'm good." So it is. It's important to realize, like, okay, yes, are you fulfilled? Are you happy with what it is that you're doing? Like, yeah, not everybody needs to go skydiving to experience being alive, But for some people, it's like, yeah, they want to go do that. So yeah, I think that that's great. And I mean, it seems like you've been able to do that a lot in your life. Like you're also kind of an explorer, an adventurer of life. Like you also like swing dancing was one of the things that you invited me to one time. And I had a lot of fun. I've never done that before, but I mean, how often, or actually, let me take a step back. Were you always into dancing and going dancing prior to getting into DJing? Or do you think that, DJing kind of helped you move along with that?
Well, DJing came about because I danced. So that
Mm,
was where that was developed, because people were like, in the dance community, can you do our wedding, that kind of thing,
okay.
or whatever it was. And then for dancing, I remember being a little girl watching Fred Astaire and Ginger Roger and Gene Kelly, and I would get up and, dance with them.
Mm.
I'd try to move my body like them, and to this day I do. I love those movies. And as it progressed, I had always loved dancing. I was in a lot of sports because where I was, well, at the time, my mother was a single mom, so she couldn't afford dance lessons. So I loved. I was a tomboy, so I did a lot of sports.
Mhm.
As I got older, though, and I could join into communities that had lessons as an adult, like my late teens, early 20s, I'd go swing dancing and ballroom and tango and country and Latin, the salsas and all those kinds of things. And no, it's a form of meditation. Like people have different things that they enjoy. So if you find yourself in a place that it really is no thought and you're feeling complete joy, that's meditation. There you go. Most people are like, I can't meditate because my mind's racing. Well, what do you like to do that just comes natural to you, that you don't have to give it a lot of thought? You're just, it just feels good. And that's what I recommend for meditation. Anyway, yeah. So, and I like different kinds of dances because they all bring out a different side of my personality.
Mm.
Most people are like, they like one dance or two dance. I like them all pretty much. There are a couple I'm not that excited about, but most of them I love for that reason.
Yeah. And do you think it's because of your role within the dance? Because obviously, like, there's always like a lead or a follower. Like, in that regard, is that what you mean by how it pulls out different aspects of your personality? Like, maybe some dances you'll lead more versus following, or in what
That's
ways do you
okay.
think?
That's a good question. I mean, I have led and I like to lead. Um, and I like to follow. And It's really about the music. So there's a movement and music to, so you have a cha-cha, or you have a salsa, or a waltz. There's a different mood that you're experiencing with that music and the movement of your body. That's the variety that I like. So when I say different parts of my personality, that's what I mean. It's true, if I'm leading, that's a different part of my personality than following. And that's a big thing that I think is important, is understanding the yin and yang, the male and female, not really gender, but more energy, and how they respond to being the leader or being the follower, or maybe they're like both at certain times in their lives, depending on what it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that. Like thinking of all the other different activities that allow people to tap into those different energies. But no, I think that's important. And diving into these different activities, it does almost help like reprogram the subconscious in a different way, because you start seeing what you're comfortable with, what you're not. Are you getting into a meditative state? Are you enjoying yourself, or is it like freaking terrifying and you're like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good thoughts.
Yeah, that's really cool. No, and I'm glad that you've had a chance to experience so many different things, because I'm sure that that's really helped you with your coaching, and it allows you to connect with so many different types of people, which again is important when you're helping different clients, because they're coming from varying backgrounds. So you know how to approach them and talk to them in a different way and meet them at their level. I think that's really important when it comes to coaching.
Good thing to notice. Yeah, good notice.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, Dawn, as we go to wrap things up, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers today? Anything else that's, I don't know, helped you or inspired you, or whatever?
Let's see here. That's a good question. I love the communication and what we've talked about. There's a lot of different things that have really helped me in my life. Let's see, not enough. EFT story. We talked about emotions, and what I would say is that there's a technique called emotional freedom technique, and it's important to process emotions. And when you're processing emotions, it's going to help physically, emotionally, and mentally. And if you can't process them, that is going to cause disease on a certain level. What I wanted to say quick about that is that it's called tapping. So you can go on YouTube, and let's say you put in sadness or abandonment or fear, or whatever the emotion, uncomfortable emotion you're having. There are a lot of EFT coaches that will take you through a tapping sequence and say certain things to honor your emotions. And as you're tapping, it's kind of like acupuncture. These are areas of the body that are very energetic in helping to release these emotions. So you're acknowledging them, you're accepting them, and then it helps release them. And I've had some amazing stories around that. And maybe that's for another time, for myself and other people. And I think it's really important for kids and adults to get in the habit of being able to release negative emotions, so they're not reliving them, for hours or days or weeks or for years on end, so they can actually be alive. And, when you're in that state, you're not living, you're not alive. So when you're in the present, that's when life happens, as we know, as we all know.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'll look into it, because that is a technique that I've heard of, but I've never gone in to study it or to practice it myself to experience it. So that's always cool. I like to study those things, and Dawn has recommended a number of different books and some movies, and what else? Like, yeah, books, movies, like some documentaries, I think maybe, and just different speakers as well. So I'm going to include all that information in the bio as well as her contact information. I think it'll be really great for individuals who are interested in this stuff to just go in and just check it out and explore and see what kind of resonates with you. There's a lot of really good material in there. And so, Dawn, I want to thank you so much for spending your morning with me. It's really nice to just start off Monday to be able to talk and connect with you and to learn more about your background and what it is that you do. So I really appreciate your time. So thank you so much for being on the show with me.
My pleasure, and thank you. You're a delight in so many ways, and this has been a wonderful experience. It's very easy to talk to you, so thank you for your interest, and thanks for listening, and thanks for asking questions, because that's important to people, and a lot of people don't get that kind of attention. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you already know I can ask like a million questions. I'll just keep going and going. So I'm always happy to chat. And we'll have to catch up soon too, because I know we've had holidays and so it's been crazy. So hopefully very soon we'll be able to just meet up and hang out, maybe go dance again.
That'd be great. Absolutely. And by the way, she was all for it. She didn't even think twice. Yeah, I'll be there. I'm going. And she had so much fun. And everybody wanted to dance with her. And she was just like, what? And, it felt good because they were open and they didn't know, you don't know each other, but people are, asking each other to dance and changing partners. And so you were a natural.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's another one of those things where it's like, we'll just see how it goes.
You're good at that. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you. And for all of our listeners out there, thank you again so much for spending your time with us and for hearing us. And I really hope you got something good out of this, because I definitely did. I feel like I learned so much every time I talked to Dawn. And so I hope you all did too. So again, check out the references and make sure to contact Dawn if, again, anything that she noted resonated with you, and just, get some info. And so until the next time, thank you all again, and have a wonderful day or night or whatever time of day you're listening to this. And we'll chat soon. Thank you.
Take care.